Hey everyone, and welcome back to today's Training Industry Leader Talk, Measuring Learning Impact, sponsored by Biz Library, Litmos, SweetRush, and WhatFix. My name is Emma, and I'm so excited to have you all here with us today. Before we get started, I just have a few housekeeping items to go over to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to use that chat window to interact with our speaker and add any comments. If you have questions, you can submit them by clicking on the Q&A icon in your Zoom toolbar. We'll address all the comments and questions throughout the event or at the end of the program during our Q&A section. At the end of your time with us, you'll notice a short survey will pop open in your browser. We'd appreciate your feedback on today's event so we can use it to improve our future ones. And as always, all of our sessions are being recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us after the event with a link to the on-demand sessions. If this is your first Training Industry event, we'd like to welcome you. Training Industry exists to make connections among learning and development professionals. We offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D through live events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research reports, and our podcast. You can make Training Industry your go-to resource for learning solutions by visiting trainingindustry.com. We would also love to hear about what you learned from today's session on social media, so please follow us on your favorite platform so we can continue the conversation. And now, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our speaker. As Chief Marketing Officer at Biz Library, Paul helps learning and development professionals demonstrate ROI and secure a seat at the executive table. Passionate about behavioral science, he leverages data-driven insights to shape the future of learning and employee engagement. Paul believes that effective learning fuels business success, empowering organizations to develop talent, boost performance, and drive measurable outcomes. Paul, we're so excited for your session today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thanks for the intro, too. That was great. Confirm for me. You're seeing my screen come through?
Looks great.
Perfect. Okay. Hey, thank you all so much for taking time out of your busy Wednesday afternoons. My gosh, the week is flying by on my end. To join me today, looks like many of you are caffeinated, got your snacks, got your drinks. That is awesome. Because I talk fast and we're going to fly through a lot of data and kind of awesome facts here. So if you haven't already, connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll see kind of some of my thought leadership, what we're seeing in the learning world. And, as Emma mentioned, Paul Eschen, Chief Marketing Officer of Biz Library, super passionate about how people think. And also, it's been interesting. I've now been in L&D for over 5 years, coming from the travel industry, where we used to talk a lot about the guest experience and really interesting translation into the learner experience that we're in now. And just thinking about the way that people tick and what makes them make decisions and how you get them to interact and engage with learning has been super fun for me. So I'll share some insights today from some of our clients and what we're seeing, in this space. But this is a little bit about me and my role and what I do every day, as Emma mentioned. For what it's worth, why I asked about your drink of choice is I have an iced coffee here. I also am a father of 4 now. And as you'll see there, I have a very young baby. She is only about 6 weeks old. So not getting a whole lot of sleep. So bear with me a little bit if I happen to just kind of look into the distance at some point. Sleep deprivation is a real thing. Thank you, Carissa. Thank you all. So yeah, but all that to say, super fun. Absolutely love being a parent. And these guys keep me on my toes. So I thought with that in mind, I wanted to start, as I think about my kids, with, does anyone know what dinosaurs, waffles, and tractors have in common? It's a tricky one. Let's keep you guys on your toes. What on earth could these toddlers? Yeah, there you go. Accurate. That is a common thread. Kids love them. My kids' fave things on our kitchen floor. Yes. 100%. So I'm assuming then, based on the chat, we do have people in the audience who have younger kids who are frequently asking them to print things out. That's one of my kids' favorite things. Print this, print that. I pull things up on Google Images and I'm trying to find them the perfect coloring page, right? So always wanting to color, have very specific asks in mind. It's interesting. I found this person on TikTok I follow who basically discovered that now using AI, and literally if you just Google AI coloring pages, you can type these things into a search bar and you can have AI create you the perfect coloring experience. So, her child wanted dinosaurs that were with waffles and tractors. Another one, this one was fun, kangaroos golfing in witches' hats near a volcano. Naturally, what child wouldn't want to color that? And pretty darn accurate, right? Like how perfectly accurate and fun are these photos? So I did want to share, I'll share some of mine here in a second, but I highlight these, in light of, my current life situation, as it has never been easier for us to curate personalized learning experiences. And this example, what is it? Is if it isn't, a personalized learning experience for your child? And I think it also perfectly highlights that our children and younger generations, Gen Z specifically, are growing up in a period where instant gratification is a thing, as we all know, based on smartphones and TikTok Nation and Instagram and all those things. But literally exactly what I want, I can get. And so I think that's what we're up against again in the learning world too, right? And this challenge of how do you make learning as fun as the experience I'm having when I'm doing personal things. And between COVID and remote work and all of these things that have developed, right? The good that's come is employees have all of the power. They get to kind of engage as they see fit. And it is our job as L&D practitioners, it's my job as a marketing professional to meet them where they are and to make things relevant and interesting to them. So I thought these were interesting examples of that. Hey, won't forget my kids. These are the ones that I created. My daughter wanted a princess on a dino with some soccer balls. I think AI delivered, and my son really got creative with a three-headed snake lion dragon of some sort, flying lion. So pretty cool. Just a personal tip. Feel free to look that up and peruse. So it made me think of something that I recently saw. Quote, can anyone tell me we are the music makers and we are the dreamers of the dreams? What is this from? More trivia here. There we go. Well done. Alicia, Harry, 2 gold stars. Very nice. Brianna does sound a bit like Kermit. Charlie and Chocolate Factory. Well done, guys. So that's exactly what it's from. So this is what you're familiar with. We are the music maker. We are the dreamers of the dreams. Showed this to my 2, 4, and 7-year-old the other night. Was a horrible idea. Multiple nightmares. Terrified for all the things. I'm going to become a blueberry. My gosh, what happened to that kid in that pipe? All of it terrifying. So I recommend maybe you wait till your kids are a little older, but I forgot how disturbing every movie from the 80s and 90s and 70s really was. Yes, I turned that off yesterday, at least. It was awful. So it was interesting. I looked this up. I assumed it was from Willy Wonka. Actually, a little bit of history for you today. This was actually from a poem by Arthur O'Shaughnessy. So this was the original source of the quote from the Roald Dahl book. Beautiful poem called Ode by Arthur O'Shaughnessy. And essentially, his perspective on this is that artists are both predictors and creators of glorious new futures, right? They foresee the change that they're going to go on to inspire. What I found fascinating, because this is kind of the quote that we know, is that if you look one step further, he actually kind of compares artists, music makers, the dreamers, against those that lose. I see this as those who are going to win in life and those that lose. We're sitting by desolate streams, world losers and world forsakers, upon whom the pale moon gleams, right? And I found that to be a fascinating kind of juxtaposition of what we're seeing in the world today, which, essentially, if you're not embracing AI, if you're not thinking about ways that AI can help drive your ability to get work done more efficiently, more productively, and or independent of AI, how am I making sure, and it's why you're here today, that I have a seat at that table when big business decisions are made? You are going to go by the wayside. You're not going to find passion or meaning in your work, and you're ultimately not going to be as fulfilled as how he kind of describes the music makers. I'd say also with that, in the last example, every single person on this webinar right now is a creator. If you don't view yourself or don't think of yourself as a creator, a person who can create learning experiences or create content in an efficient and effective way, you need to change that mindset to more of a growth mindset where you recognize that that is going to be your role in the future if you want to be a part of strategic decision making. So why is Biz Library an expert in some of these areas? So if you're not familiar with us, we're an L&D company that builds learning programs for our clients around three main challenges. Won't spend long on this. We build inclusive cultures, we help you upskill and reskill, and we help with leadership development. So those solutions come to life in a couple of forms. We have a library of 12,000 plus on-demand video lessons. We have a growing library of expert-led training courses from CEOs, authors, TEDx speakers that we call the Expert Insight Series. Biz Library is one of the only content producers that can literally take client feedback and create our own, we have our own production studio and we create our own content. We have an award-winning LMS that we can create customized learning initiatives for your employees. We also launched Biz Skills a few years ago, which is really personalized upskilling at scale. It matches 1,500 skills mapped to over 600 of the most common job roles in North America and Canada. And those are all mapped to our award-winning learning content. So really kind of making upskilling effortless, at the end of the day. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we are also infusing AI in everything that we do. So in a few months, we're launching a content creation tool that'll allow you to basically create your own learning lesson just via text. It'll create the video for you. It'll create the voiceover for you. If you're familiar with a tool like Synthesia, it'll be very similar to that. But content creation tool. And AI has also allowed us to create all of our courses in over 15 languages, kind of at the push of a button and kind of validate the quality there as well. So we really see Biz Library as a place where learning happens in all of its many forms and all of its many modalities. So thank you again for joining me. I'm super excited to dive into this. If you are interested in further upskilling, 2 weeks from today, Biz Library is hosting a free online day, very similar to the one that you're currently attending, called Boost. And Boost is all about the future of how to future-proof your workforce. So go to bizlibrary.com/boost, invite your C-suite. This is really more geared towards, strategic thinking about what the future holds. I will tell you, one of our presenters, which is fascinating to me, is going to be presenting on how she's a CHRO of a technology company. They're actually in cybersecurity. She's going to be sharing her story of how they got to a third interview with someone that was a deep fake AI. And in her community, she's learned that many more HR professionals are seeing essentially fake employees apply for jobs. You would say, why on earth would anybody waste their time with this? Especially when you're just interviewing remotely, right? Not that crazy and not that difficult to do these days. Well, the reality of it is there are some horror stories out there of HR professionals that hire an employee who stays with the company, literally works at the company for a few months, but is not a real person, and they steal the company's data and information, and then they disappear, never to be heard from again. So tune in to Boost if you can. I'm fascinated by that. Like, it blows my mind. It's terrifying for all the wrong reasons, and fascinating for all the wrong reasons. But yep, tune in to Boost if you can. So here is why you're here: from strategy to impact, how to prioritize goals and measure what matters. So topic I'm passionate about, and what is fascinating even from 3 months ago when I started talking about this, my gosh, we are in a time of even more growing macroeconomic uncertainty, right? So organizations are being asked to do more with less, budgets are tightening, scrutiny is increasing, the margin for error is shrinking. Raise your hand metaphorically in the chat. Give me a thumbs up. Give me a yes if this sounds familiar to you. And I think in this climate, the ability to clearly prioritize goals and, just as important, measure their true impact has become not just valuable anymore, right? It's essential. So today we'll really explore how to bridge the gap between strategy and measurable outcomes. So how will we do that? A couple strategic trends that are impacting learning in 2025 and beyond. I'll touch on that. I'm going to give you guys a blueprint for building a successful learning program in 2025 and beyond. So you're going to walk away with a worksheet. We're going to drop it in the chat here shortly that I want you to actually download, leverage with your teams, leverage with your executives or your boss. Again, we're through the first quarter of the year, depending on your fiscal year. This is kind of evergreen, depending on what initiative you're starting or what you're focused on. Way to prioritize your learning initiatives based on key success metrics and business KPIs. So getting to thinking about that as well. Thank you, Lauren. She just dropped that in the chat, so take a look. And then I'm really, I've worked in a lot of organizations with many HR and L&D leaders. I'm going to share with you from sitting in my seat in the C-suite. How do you get buy-in? What resonates with me? What do I like and not like about my history with HR professionals that got it right and ones that didn't? My perspective on how you can have a seat at that table. So without further ado, I mentioned we're flying through it. We only have 45 minutes. I had to cut slides 20 minutes ago trying to get all the best of the best stuff in here. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'll share more later today. And then also we're going to share the deck with you. So please do not hesitate to email me, reach out if you have more questions, if we don't get to them today. So forward-looking trends for 2025 and beyond. I'm going to go one by one, but I'll share at a high level what those are. Disconnect between training priorities and practice. Why is this occurring? And I definitely think there's a disconnect between the things that we focus on and the things that are actually important to the business. That probably doesn't sound surprising to you. Upskilling is taking the center stage. Specifically, interesting, while upskilling is still important, about 2-3 years ago, everyone was talking about, my gosh, how do I upskill my organization at scale? All of the skills needed post-COVID to do a job have basically, there are more skills needed, and they're moving quicker than I can even keep up with, right? So that's things like digital skills and digital literacy, and how are we training our employees for the technology of the future? That is an absolutely huge one. With that, there is a very interesting crossroads right now of talent and technology. No surprise, but I'll share kind of C-suite's focus on that and executives' kind of perspective based on some interesting data. HR Party 1, how do we avoid burnout and bottlenecks? My perspective on that, as well as ultimately what you need to be focused on relative to your HR and L&D stack, so your technology stack. What are you leveraging today? How are you showing the CFO that you're getting value out of those tools? Okay, quick exercise for you. This is what I want you to think about for this entire session. Imagine you have 100 pennies, $1. Imagine these pennies represent your time and energy for the rest of 2025. How are you going to divide them up? Think about that. How are you going to divide those pennies up to make the biggest impact? And that's really what we're going to kind of dissect today to help you out. This is fascinating. We use the word priorities a lot. Here are our strategic priorities. If you're anything like me or your organization is, you probably have 5 to 6 strategic priorities for a given year. And guess what? It's impossible to do 5 or 6 things really, really well. And I wonder why that is. Well, it's fascinating to me. The word priority actually came into the English language in the 1400s and was a singular word. There was no such thing as priorities. By definition, the word priority meant I've got one thing to focus on, right? How nice would that be if you had one thing to focus on in your organization? It stayed singular for the next 500 years. Well done, history of the world, for those 500 years. And only in the 1900s, when you add in technology boom and the Industrial Revolution, all of these things that started to give us more and more and more information and more consumerism, did we pluralize that term to say, hey, we've got a lot of priorities now. We got a lot of stuff we got to focus on. So that's pretty funny. And what I'm now going to show you is, it's exactly what we're seeing, I'd say, that disconnect between the things that you all want to train on and want to focus on versus the things you plan on training on in 2025. So we just did our 3rd annual Trends in Training survey. Lauren, I'll put you on the spot. We've got the survey findings in the ebook somewhere. If you can find it, drop it in the chat. I think that would be an awesome resource for this audience. But you could also Google it. It's our 3rd year in a row. We kind of track what is the L&D and HR community focused on in the next year, and then we kind of track those trends over time. Here are the top 5 training areas for 2025. Again, probably not a surprise to any of you. I assume many of you on the call are like, yeah, it's kind of what we do, right? We have to annual compliance. We've got employees in Chicago, New York, California. We got to train on certain things. We got to keep everyone compliant. We got to make sure that's covered. Hey, we've got people who need to make sure that we avoid lawsuits with workplace safety. And then onboarding is a very common one. Cybersecurity, leadership, good to see on there. We see, say, 98% of companies that are looking for online training come to us for compliance needs, come to us for leadership. Those are the top 2 use cases. And I would bucket all those top 4 kind of in the same thing together. Now, it's interesting that when you look at, okay, this is what we are training on, but let's look at what your L&D wish list is. What would you like to be training on? And if you look at the last 3 years, it's very consistent, guys. The things that you're training on versus the things you really wish you had more time to devote to. Leadership development, new manager training, which is kind of bucketed under that. Communication training, huge focus. Whether you're hybrid, whether you're fully remote now, whether you're in person, it's a lot harder to communicate in the digital world, and messages get mixed, and understanding and kind of your whether it's proximity bias, right? If I'm not in the office, it's perceived I'm not working as hard. A lot of lines have gotten blurred here. So communication training is absolutely a big focus on the rise that we see from clients. Digital literacy and transformation, doesn't surprise me that this is a wish list item. It is still not very prevalent across all of our clients as something people are training on. It's just something they know still is relatively in its infancy, even though it needs to be adopted, and they're thinking through what that looks like. And then technical skills is kind of aligned to digital literacy. So here is the priorities worksheet. And I am going to walk you through how to think about this and think about training in your organization. So essentially, we built this thinking about a spectrum. And on the far left is the things that the business cares most about, is probably what I'll say. And they care most about them. And this is your leadership team, and these are your investors or your board, because they have the biggest ROI, financial dollars, business impact that could hurt you. They open you up the most to risk. And thus, on the far right side, we have employee impact. So this is probably the things often that you want to train on, that you really do care about, and that leadership recognizes as important. But guess what? When I can't tie ROI to it, and I don't have dollar signs associated with it, and it's perceived as a cost to the business without really understanding the measurable results, I am going to often focus more on the things on the left side and less on the things on the right side. So let's walk through these. Compliance and risk mitigation, harassment training, workplace safety, cybersecurity, onboarding, all the things you guys are working on. Hey, that's good news, right? Obviously, clear business impact and clear understanding that the organization needs these things. As you move to the right, though, you'll see business growth and customer retention. We generally see, hey, I got to focus, I got to train my customer service reps, right? NPS scores are low. Our customers are churning. They're leaving us. Hey, we've got a new product launching, right? That's business growth. We've got a new product launching. We need to train our sales team. I'd say if you are looking at a digital literacy initiative or really looking to upskill your people in kind of the technology world, this is a good chart to use and a good conversation to have with your boss, your executives, because we really do see customers who are successful at driving these initiatives pushing this into this bucket. We are not going to be prepared for the future, and we are not going to be able to move move further faster if we don't have digitally literate employees who understand how to use new emerging technologies. So that's the example, new product launch. A lot of this is not necessarily training that Biz Library can help you with, as much as kind of your ad hoc, your internal trainings that you're running and maybe putting into a learning management system. Leadership development, as you see, right? Big business impact, but it's starting to move towards employee retention. First-time managers. Hey, coming out of COVID, we got to train our first-time managers. What happened? Baby boomers retired. All of the millennials got thrown into leadership positions with very limited experience in leadership. So that a heavy focus on first-time manager the last few years. Communication skills I already touched on, and then hybrid leadership I touched on as well. After you focus on leaders, we generally see career pathing and employee retention for high potentials. That's where you start seeing, okay, well, we feel really good about our leadership team. Let's start looking at the future leaders of this organization. Hey, we're losing some high potentials that are a little younger that are moving on for more pay because they're not getting, promoted soon enough. Let's make them feel the love. Again, this is kind of a spectrum of how you may even think about your learning initiatives and your priority focus. That's kind of why we designed it this way. And hopefully it is providing, it's getting the wheels spinning and providing a bit of a rubric for how you can think about it within your organization. In this, you've got high potential. This is where you start seeing the upskilling and reskilling focus with specific skills. I need Excel training for my accountants, right? I need communication training for this, for my developers, right? They are going to be on more client-facing calls, and they need to work on how to kind of listen for the right things and respond to them. Very job-specific training here in this area. And then I also say in this bucket, if you're an organization that is very keen on getting personalized development plans for the specific roles in your organization, huge focus right now, right? Where there's some things that are department specific, organization wide, but you're really getting into that individualized development plan, that would fall in this bucket as well. Which kudos to you if you are. It's super cool. This one will be probably not surprising to you guys, but I would love this to be much more closely connected to the far left, engagement and culture. Work-life balance. Employees are expecting work-life balance now. That is their right. It's no longer a nice to have, right? Building inclusive workplaces. How are we prioritizing and thinking about DEIB? Hey, my perspective on this, I'm not diving in. It would be a whole other webinar into what's happening in the regulatory world right now. What we're hearing from our clients, some doubling down on the importance of DEIB, and then others are kind of in a wait and see mode, right? So I'd say, there's actually a lot of great literature out there. There's other webinars out there that I've seen from Treliant and some other organizations that touch more on this, but admittedly, I think we're all still kind of in a bit of a holding pattern. I'd say the focus, though, on developing an inclusive culture will remain no matter what, and that still remains a focus. The customers we have and the conversations we have with L&D folks that are super strategic connect business objective 5 to business objective 1, right? Is that part of your onboarding program? Is that part of your culture that is inherently tied where your C-suite thinks about compliance and risk mitigation so closely to the engagement and culture piece? That's really where you want to be and where you want to win. And I'd say with that, the more that you're able to move things on the far right and show how they impact things on the far left, that's where you really start making a difference and where you get initiatives you're focused on, moved up to the top of the list. So, employee, and I'll share an example of that in a second that I actually love. So employee upskilling development, think of it as organizations that are building a culture of continuous learning. Hey, our CEO, our company fundamentally believes in building a culture where every employee gets to have time to learn. It's rare. We've got those clients. If you have that culture in your organization, kudos. If you're trying to build it, think about where it fits in the spectrum. Think about your organization and think about how to tie this initiative on the far right to things on the far left. It was interesting. I was on a webinar earlier in the year, and the topic of tying business objectives to training objectives came up. And one of our clients essentially said, they have had more requests and they have been able to build more programming for learning around emotional intelligence than ever before. And I asked, well, how did you get there? And the reality of it was they were struggling with business challenges like employee churn and having HR complaints and all of these things. And it was our client's ability to connect leaders who weren't emotionally intelligent and the things that come with that to those business challenges that allowed them to have a more concrete conversation around what has historically been a soft skill that feels a little more squishy, right? You either have it or you don't, hard to develop. But I think what we're seeing more and more is that these are the types of skills that need to develop to be successful in business. So I don't have it in here. You'll see from what Lauren dropped in, this is editable. So here is what I would ask for you to do. Pick 3 priorities. I'm not expecting you to be able to select one, right? But if you have 3 priorities for the rest of this year or for the next 12 months, think about the percent of focus that you want to give them based on the spectrum that I outlined. Think about their business outcomes. Think about when you're going to get them done. It'll take me Q1. It's going to take me the rest of 2025 to build this out. What will you measure success on? So, for example, workplace safety. Hey, we've had a lot of on-the-job injuries. If I look at new product launch, we've had product defects. We got to train all of our people on the manufacturing floor to ensure that we have a much smaller margin of error of defective products, right? Get to those ROI metrics of what you're actually trying to measure if you aren't already. And then what I would highly recommend is sitting down with your boss or leadership in your organization, validating what your priorities are against what theirs are. Because my hope is if you're doing this properly, you are leveraging what you've heard from them and what you've heard from the business and filling out this based on that and not based on things that you personally want to train on. You've heard the needs of the business. You're outlining them here. You are using this to validate what your time should be spent on and validate how you can make the biggest impact to leadership. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. going to fly through. We got 15 minutes, but honestly, that's I'd say the biggest part. I'm going to fly through a lot of data here. So, question: what's the single biggest thing keeping your boss, senior leaders up at night in 2025? We'll go through this quick. Funny if I had asked this 3 months ago, I think it'd be even a little different. I know I'm going to see probably some tariffs, some economic uncertainty. Dropped in transformation. Great. Love that. Yep. Business transformation, digital transformation, retention, tariffs for sure. Yep. Employee turnover. Yeah, it's interesting. Both in government organizations, higher ed, we're seeing a lot of big client base for us. Kind of a lot of things being put on pause. Medicaid, Social Security, employee engagement, AI adoption. Awesome. So we asked this question in our survey. These were the challenges that we got back. So and hey, Kay, that's a great one too. Bigger impact on budget. Hold that for a second because we'll talk about L&D challenges as well. Here are what CEOs said their top 3 challenges were when we asked them. Talent acquisition and retention. I love seeing this as a focus. And if you get a really good CEO, they are always focused on and being kept up at night by, do we have the right talent in seat and how are we upskilling them and retaining them? That's a really cool thing to have as the #1 priority focus. New business growth, no surprise given a lot of the transformation that was referenced earlier. Leadership development, upskilling and reskilling, employee engagement. Those are really the top 4 or 5, and they've remained that way for some time. What are the challenges that they see, right? So this is kind of, leadership development. Yeah, so essentially the same ones. 2025. Oh, sorry, my fault. This was last year. This is how it's changed going to 2025. Leadership development became an even bigger focus. If you look at this, it moved up to #1 for us. So getting the right employees in seat and developing them. Upskilling and reskilling was 2. Talent acquisition moved down a little bit. Employee engagement. Actually, business growth moved to #5 here, year over year. I believe, and I've been following a lot of interesting kind of following a lot of surveys of Fortune 500 C-suite members. There's one from PricewaterhouseCoopers that came out a few years ago that they've been updating. What sticks out to me in all of them is 2 main things. And it's literally this crossroads and focus on technology balanced with talent. Do I have the right talent in seat to leverage new technologies? How can I measure the productivity of these new tools? If you look at the top 10 C-suite concerns from this PwC survey, cybersecurity was #1. If you're not training on this, great question. Anna, the last few I showed you was from Biz Library survey. So that's L&D and HR professionals' perspective of what their CEOs focused on. These survey results are directly C-suite members. So CHRO, CFO, CEO, Chief Revenue Officer. They are focused on and worried about cybersecurity, the economic climate, talent acquisition, new technologies making current business models irrelevant. We're going to give you this deck, but I would leverage this data to say, hey, I heard this in a webinar today. Is this what you're hearing too, CEO? Let's talk about what that means and how I can help you guys, accomplish some of these things. When they were asked what will limit business transformation over the next 3 to 5 years, this was fascinating to me. Consolidation of technology. And hey, if you're an L&D and HR, I don't know what your technology stack looks like, but there is absolutely a consolidation in the industry, right? Like Biz Library, we see ourselves as an all-in-one training and L&D solution. We're trying to consolidate being compliance, upskilling, leadership, content creation, content aggregation, everything you could need. You're going to get these questions if you haven't already on why do we need more than one provider? What does that look like? That's happening across businesses as they're trying to get more efficient and be more cost effective. Upskilling of talent, right? Tech, AI, innovation. And then ultimately, this is interesting too. Many organizations are very afraid that their business model is going to be outdated. They're worried that their company culture can't foster that innovation necessary to be successful in 5 years. Hey, AI is going to make my business model irrelevant. That is largely why, at the heart of why you're seeing Google, Microsoft, Zoom, all of them bring their employees back into work, right? Like, we don't believe, if I don't have eyes on what's happening, I can't build my company culture. We can't be innovative. That's really what's driving this fear. What is fascinating to me in that world is the employee side. And you're probably feeling this if you're talking to your employees. Okay, the CEO and the C-suite is worried about cost cutting, is worried about technology's impact on our jobs. They're worried about the talent they have in seat. What's fascinating is those same business executives believe that there's a high level of trust between our company's leaders and their employees. They believe they have the right culture for business reinvention. And they believe that they successfully attract and retain the talent we need, by and large, right? So there is a disconnect there. And I've seen it across organizations I talk to. I've done this presentation a number of times. I hear a lot of like scoffs in person of like, yeah, that's what they claim to think. And there's a big disconnect then with what the employees feel. So you guys sit in the middle of that, right? That's a hard job. I would call out, if you're seeing this in your organization, be as transparent as possible and encourage your C-suite to make it very plain and give very real life examples of how AI, of how technology is impacting the business for the positive, because people are absolutely terrified out there that their job's going to go away. And that doesn't foster the type of innovation that's needed to actually have them turn on that piece of their brain that's saying, how can I leverage these new tools and technologies to do my job better, to add more value to the business? So there's definitely a disconnect there. Okay, HR, and that should be L&D party one, bottlenecks and burnout. So what barriers, and someone commented on this earlier, do you currently see impacting your 2025 goals, the ones you currently have in place? Drop those in the chat if you would. Budget, yep. Christine, question on that. Digital tools, is that having the right tools, learning the tools, you have too many tools? Comment on that. Loss of staff, budget, limited resources, leadership not creating visions. Great one, Harry. I absolutely love that. Yeah, I mean, if you don't have the vision, how are you supposed to understand what your focuses need to be and how you line up in that with what we're talking about? VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, constant need to refill vacant positions due to churn, too many tools, not the right tools, combining tools. Yes. Unwilling to declare what's, guys, I love these. Really well done. One man show, not enough support here. Yep, we've all been there. Hey, love that. This is like an emotional support group, so I love it. Keep it coming. So here is what we found in our survey, the latest one in Q4 going into 2025. What are L&D and HR folks focused on? Or sorry, what are their biggest challenges? Not enough time to devote. So we saw that, right? Time and money. That was the latest one there. Not enough time to devote to building a training program. Measuring the impact. Not enough learner participation. Super common. How do I get my people in there leveraging the system? Not enough budget. No surprise there as well, right? Leadership support. I saw one in there that is fascinating, Heather, that we're going to touch on here shortly. Clarity of ownership. This doesn't work, the framework, any of these conversations, if you don't have sit-down conversations with senior leaders and validate that what I'm worried about is what you're worried about, is what the business is worried about. So that is super important to this, because you're right. We can't, any of us, have clarity of ownership if we don't actually have conversations with the owners of the department. How many of you have tried to get an initiative off the ground and the leaders of those departments don't buy in? You have no chance. You're not going to be able to go around them. If they're saying at the water cooler that something's not important to them, and what is HR or L&D doing with this new initiative, it's never going to get done. I've seen it a million times. Here would be the questions that I would ask. What are your biggest priorities going into 2025? Hey, in light of all of these things that have changed, how is that shifting our priorities? What are the top 2 or 3 things that we're focused on for this year, and how do I impact them? Inventory those priorities across your organization. That is something that I have not seen done enough or done well enough. If I was in HR, if I was in learning and development, I would be talking to the top 5 or 6 people in my organization every quarter. What's changed? Our business is constantly changing. Look at everything I just shared. The C-suite believes things are constantly changing and they're constantly worried about it. How many of you have seen firsthand, all of you, I assume, the CEO gets an idea, the CEO sees something, the CEO reads something and goes, we got to pivot. We got to create this. That's how businesses run. So if you're not having those sit-down conversations to understand what's changed, and you're working in a silo and still focusing on the thing you thought was important 3 months ago, you are going to be passed up in relevance and or thrown to the side and not able to add value. I would inventory priorities across the organization, and I would use the framework priorities based on what you hear. I think what works really well is when you are the connection point for the organization. And I promise you, if you don't think that you have that seat at the table, or that C-suite's busy or whatever it is, I've loved nothing more than when someone says, I don't have a problem. You don't have an employee problem. You don't have a manager problem. I haven't heard. I'm HR. I haven't heard from anyone. I just want to pick your brain. I want to talk to you about what you're focused on and what you're seeing. You have such a wealth of knowledge in leaders across your organization. If you're not tapping into them, absolutely huge miss. Report back what you found to your boss to start a healthy dialogue around where your initiatives fit. I love when I am shared with information from our L&D and HR teams. It makes me feel more connected to the employees. It makes me feel more connected to people. So please, please, please take that to heart. This is often what I see too often, reactive versus proactive. Hey, I'm literally reacting to, as I mentioned, employee problem. We've got this problem. We got to talk about it. Just like many learning initiatives where nobody wants to log into the LMS because they associate it with compliance versus personalized upskilling or developing myself personally and professionally. The same thing happens with many business stakeholders' relationship to HR and L&D. If you only come to me when there's a problem, how am I supposed to feel like we're proactively working on things together? Your priorities, or even the CEO's, might not be my priorities. I see this all the time. Well, Joe, the CEO, wants it this way, right? He doesn't, this is what he said. I see often we admire the problem too much. So if you're telling me this is how the CEO wants it, we just have to put up with it, well, let's dig into that more. Maybe my perspective as the CMO or your chief technology officer's perspective might be just as important and might actually help the CEO think differently about something that they're not thinking about, right? I personally believe that if you're able to show me a plan, a way of thinking, new data that makes me care about the problem, and or show me a solution for how we can fix it, that's the best case. And I know that's hard, and it doesn't seem like in many cases something that you feel empowered to do, but that's ultimately what business leaders are expecting from a strategic HR or L&D leader. So many meetings, projects, ideas languish because someone doesn't take the first step to build a plan. This is what I see the most. We sit and talk about, organizations sit and talk about a new leadership development program, and you do not start it or get it off the ground because it's too daunting. We see it from our client organizations. I absolutely love that we plan on kicking this off, or we're coming to Biz Library because we signed on with this other software and we never got it off the ground, right? It just sat on the shelf. Think about your perspective and your organization's perspective on a problem. So let's use leadership development. If you've heard this idea of novelty, which is basically take the brain to a place where it can't predict the ending, float something by a leader that you heard, or think about a perspective to get a reaction to something that you've built. Be a creator, right? Show me you've thought about this when you come to me with an idea that I then am forced to give you an opinion on that can help us get closer to the ultimate goal. If you own a leadership development program and you can't get off the ground, right, because it's in the middle and it's not a business focus, talk to me about leadership and how you think about it in our organization. Hey, I've been thinking about it. Everyone's a leader in this organization, right? Whether you're leading yourself, you're leading others, or you're leading leaders. Here are different things that we could train on. Good leaders think about things and provide frameworks for how others can think about it and grasp onto that. Compliance training, right? Science tells us that people, executives, chief among them, cannot, they get choice overload. And essentially what that means is if you're faced with more than 3 choices, this is literally science-based, there's a lot of research on it, you are going to regret whatever decision you make. You're also going to get choice overload and you're not going to be able to make a decision. That happens far too much, right? I talked about there's too many priorities and we can't pick one. Make it simple. Thinking about compliance training is one example. Hey, there's a lot of compliance trainings. There's a lot of things we could focus on. I think about wellness. That's external compliance. I think about legal compliance. I think about the people. I think about our systems and onboarding and all of the data being in one place, right? Or I think about our process and we're opened up to risk because we don't have a safe manufacturing plan or work environment for whatever reason. Which of these are important to you, CEO? How do we think about how to prioritize these? And then thinking about really great questions you go into that meeting with. What are the desired outcomes and behaviors, right, for the legal side of this, which all of you are generally training on? Great starting place for your competencies. How am I making sure I'm up to date with all the state and federal regulations? As you see things changing, active shooter a few years ago You know, as a good example, things that came out of COVID, right? Make sure that you're up to speed on those, and make sure you're educating yourself and asking really smart questions to keep your business from being at risk. These are good places to start. It's why I shared the feedback earlier from the C-suite. You now know what they are focused on. Bring those up in conversations that directly tie to your world of how you can upskill and reskill your people to solve some of these business challenges. So I am right at time. I'm going to get to my last thought. Value and consolidation in L&D and HR. I just wanted to call out, this is from the PricewaterhouseCooper survey again. 90% of CFOs, this was 2 years ago, and they haven't had the exact same study as much as just kind of enhancements. CFOs are trying to strike the right balance. I've seen it in the chat today between cost cutting and investing for growth. Every single organization faces this challenge. How are you helping them? How are you looking? This would be my recommendation at your technology stack and asking every one of your partners, what's your perspective on AI? How are you helping me get more productive in my day job? How are you providing me insights based on my data that will help me do my job that I can take back to the CFO to see value? If you've got partners that don't have that answer for you, you need to find new partners, because I promise you, every technology company out there has that information. L&D and HR are very similar to marketing, right? Sometimes we're viewed as cost centers. It's hard in organizations for us to show our value. If you live in an organization like that, I mean, I feel for you, right? I've been there. I've moved on from organizations because of it, because I was banging my head against a wall. Where you can find solace, and I swear to you this is true, is, because I do it, I manage all of our sales and marketing technology stack. I'm learning from the people that I partner with. I'm learning from the client success managers in these organizations who are teaching me about my data because of the way that they house it and the insights they're sharing. And I'm learning from meetings with my peers. Learn from your department leaders. You are not alone, and you need to treat other managers in the organization as your peers if this is a challenge for you. So I leave you with this learning program framework. Please feel free to email me, send me questions and your thoughts. But I would love to just leave with this. What were your biggest takeaways from today's sessions? It was a lot. I appreciate your engagement, your time with me. Then what questions do you have as we kind of have a minute here?
All right, Paul, thank you so much. You're getting tons of kudos and thank yous in the chat. Seems like this was a really helpful session for everyone, so we're really grateful.
Love it. Yeah, anytime. Super fun. Thanks all for your engagement.
All right. So we're at time. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us for today's event. And thanks again to all of our speakers and our sponsors, Biz Library, Litmos, SweetRush, and WhatFix. As I mentioned earlier, all of today's sessions are pre-qualified for a credit hour by SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. I'd love to see you all in person here in Raleigh, North Carolina for the 2025 Training Industry Conference and Expo. TICE is where learning leaders like you gather to forge new professional connections, learn from each other, and address your most pressing learning challenges. You can re-energize your learning initiatives at TICE 2025 in just a few months. You can learn more at TICE2025.com. And the ability to optimize learning analytics processes is becoming an increasingly in-demand skill for learning professionals, but it doesn't have to be intimidating. You can learn to integrate, define, and interpret learning analytics with the new Training Industry Learning Analytics Workshop. One last reminder that a survey will pop open in your browser when you leave this webinar. We'd really appreciate your feedback so we can use it to improve our future events. And again, thank you all for joining us. Until next time, I'm Emma. Have a great day.